All right. Welcome to round number 5. We are on the play. And our hand looks like a keep. I mean, we have the most elusive card in our deck, as we're told, or typically the most elusive card in our deck. And also Taliaferro goes along with it pretty well. So as long as we have time, we have sort of all the parts of our combo we need. Plus, you just very rarely mulligan hands with As Foretold in them. Uh-oh. Might be some shadow action. No, maybe. Maybe some weirder shadow action, but Arid Mesa is certainly not typical. Might be more like a Zoo shadow deck. Yeah, looking that way. Goblin Guide coming at us. Architects. We'll draw the Architects. All right. Pretty happy to just pass here. We will remand anything particularly troublesome. Excuse me. Apologies for that. Alright, see what we hit off this guy. There's a curator on top, so if we get to architects this turn, that would be a fine use of our turn as well. Pretty sure we're happy just to remand that, though. I mean, draw is appealing when we have this As Foretold, but I guess maybe I should have actually, because we do have like draw into we have draw into like slam As Foretold, transmute T West, and it's sort of tough to fit that all in. So I think I'm going to have to slam As Foretold this turn, in case my opponent puts me in a position where I feel like I have to Living End. I could still cycle one guy next turn, which is good for us, right? But not as great as if I got to cycle a bunch of guys and kill them in one shot. Although my opponent's paying enough life that I probably do get to kill them in one shot anyway. Blue makes me a little nervous because they could have stub, but they're obviously just put a bunch of guys on the board. So we're definitely going to be transmuting this T West into a Living End if we don't draw one. There's As Foretold on top. Or, I mean, Ancestral on top, excuse me. We'll cycle this first since we could just draw a Living End. And if we did just draw a Living End, then we wouldn't have to spend the mana to transmute. Looks like a no, so we're going to play that. Transmute this for Living End. Cast it. Opponent does get their own Street Wraith. Fortunately, River of Tears is not a swamp. And we'll almost have lethal next turn. We do have lethal if our Cryptic resolves, but we'll see about that. Opponent has a very colorful mana base, as expected from such a deck. By the way, I mentioned sub earlier when our opponent fetched a blue source. I think it's worth noting that it's very likely that our opponent just does not have stub in their deck. It would be kind of weird in this particular list, but it's worth thinking about when it would cause us to lose the game. But looks like we do just get to tap and attack for what is now lethal. All right. So against this deck, what do we want? Explosives is probably good. I have actually no idea what a Tribal Flames Death Shadow deck would be interested in graveyard hate-wise. It feels like Surgical and probably nothing else. but you never know, right? They could have jammed something stranger. It feels like surgical, though. I think Echoing Truth might actually be worth just buying me some time here. Chalice is reasonable against my opponent, but on the draw, they're not as creature light as a typical shadow deck. So it's harder. It's much easier for them to get under this Chalice than a regular Death Shadow deck. So I think we'll go ahead and be off of those. I could see shaving a Street Wraith here and potentially an Archfiend. I could see being interested in Macabres or Echoing Truth, especially since we don't know what random hate they may have. I like that, I think. Remains on the draw against this deck. I mean, their mana is very awkward a lot of the time, so I actually think Remands are okay. And I'm not really excited about anything else. The extra Street Wraith might need to stay in. They're going to be hitting me in particularly large chunks too. I think it's just important that I see the cards I need to see to be able to win the game. They might have stub post board. That's something to keep in mind. I still kind of doubt it, but we'll see. I mean, the blue is more likely just to support the Tribal Flames, but also maybe something weirder like Geist or stub or what have you. Obviously, double Living End is not very helpful here. And the Field of Ruin, while very likely being a strip mine, our opponent probably doesn't have a single basic, is still productive in that regard, but not very good for cycling our guys, right, if we miss on a land. Plus, this hand doesn't have As Foretold. I think I'm supposed to keep it, but it is kind of close. We have one half of our combo, though, and if our opponent has a discard spell, we still get to keep it. With the redundant copy, if they have discard, I mean, there's a lot less discard in this list, if even any, really. It's still worth noting, right? But it's not a huge boon. So we'll cycle this Riverwinder up front. I mean, they almost certainly do not have Inquisition. They might have Thoughtseize, at least post-board. But we'll see. This deck is far less interested in interacting with you and far more interested in just battle raging and even become immensing and tribal flamesing, all that good stuff. Bunch of 1/1s in play. Bunch of 1/1s. I think we leave up the Remand rather than like try to hit a blue source off of Riverwinder up front. Well, that fixes my opponent's 1/1 problem. Now they're a bunch of 3/3s. Might of Alara. Yeah. Well, that's pretty good. Remand, it doesn't do much either. Macabre. Yeah. Pretty dead Zos. Can't really draw anything here, but whoops, looks like we're trying to cast that card. Oh, still trying to cast that card. I don't even know why I'm determined to cycle it anyway, since we are on no outs, but okay, game 3. Chalices, are they better? The opponent has a lot of 1-drop creatures. They're probably better enough. And Remands are probably bad enough. Shave a Cryptic, or maybe a Street Wraith. No, I still need to have cycling density here. And like I said, my opponent's usually just going to be hitting me in such large chunks that Street Wraiths are unlikely to matter. I guess I'm probably supposed to be shaving Ancestral here. Archfiend is just too much to cycle as well, though. Probably would rather leave 3 Cryptics. These aggressive matchups is just so hard to find time to Ancestral. Unless you, like, in a game where, like this, where you have As Foretolds and you're sort of just, like, using living ends just to kill your opponent's creatures. But generally you can find, like, enough pressure before you living end that, against the aggressive decks, that you're not literally using your living ends as just a Wrath, right? Double Street Rate's not good for me. We're going to have to find one of those 3 Macabres. I guess it doesn't matter. I have the Bajuka Bog. Here I am thinking that that's a problem, but I forgot about my Bog. Swift Spear. All right. One of the less scary 1-drops. Finding Chalice here would be sweet. Curator. All right. Gemstones, not great. I wonder, I guess I'm going to cycle this and see if this is a good opportunity for me to play Bog. Well, now we found that as well. So we'll just get this Bog out there. It's kind of nice to Bog too if my opponent is interested in Become Immense. Might have Alara's worth +5 here. Hopefully this is just like a Tarmogoyf or something. 1/2, 1/2 Goyf. Got a pair of 1/2s. All right, deck. Well, I'm gonna need to draw Taliaferro West or Living End. But if we draw those things, I feel pretty confident we'll get there. If not, we're gonna have some issues. But this is the kind of game too where, like, our opponent was slow enough that those Ancestrals are good, right? But Cryptic would be good here too, right? Shaved an Ancestral to keep all Cryptics, and obviously Cryptic would be just fine to buy us some time. Death Shadow, yeah. Opponents closing the door pretty quickly here. Might be... Okay, it's definitely worth macabbing now. I guess it just doesn't matter, but we'll go for it. I guess it keeps me alive if they literally have no additional threats or spells or ways to grow. Oh, Canonist. All right, well, that doesn't change anything now. Come on, deck. That's so sad. All right. Make me sad, deck. Make me sad. Extra As Foretold is not doing it for me. Just needed one of our 7 outs. Oh well. It's funny how Canonist is just so much less good against us than it is against traditional. I mean, it's still worth having because, like, there's the turns we want to cast As Foretold and Living End at the same time, but it's funny how much poorer it is against us than it would be against traditional Living End. Opponent's getting in for nearly 20 here. Looks like they're trying to make it 20. Yeah. All right. Well, we couldn't quite get there. This league, we were determined to finish poorer, I guess, than the actual league I played earlier, where we ended 4-1. But either way, I appreciate everybody watching these videos, and I'll see you just a minute in the wrap-up.